material for presentation assigned to me is from otherwise than being, and the section in it is actually the pages is from 4 to 6. These pages contains two themes. First one is being and interest. It's a small piece, and then some elaboration on the said and the say. And I shall only focus on the central themes discussed in this part. I won't be explicating the entire this material line by line. And the first section about being and interest primarily speak about essence is interest. That is the argument. And that paragraph, the first paragraph of the section, elaborates on how the human search for essence is coupled with interest. Certainly, Levinas has in mind the history of philosophy while saying this, where always the cognitive drive was the leading drive, if we look at the history of philosophy. And where the primary interest is to know phenomena cognitively, has been the main intention behind every philosophical activity from Parmenides to the present, till Heidegger. What Levinas says is that human motive to form the essence out of manifold experiences of objects is certainly intended to use these objects to fulfill human beings' various purposes in life. This is the interest Levinas speaks of in this paragraph. And he also, in this same paragraph, he also invites our attention to the danger involved in such a seeking for essences. Such a seeking ultimately land up in struggle and conflict between each other, between human beings, with each other. This is explained as the cause of all egoism and war between human beings as well as between nations. This drama is going on in human history for ages. And he says that no entity has the patience to wait till their opportunity arrives. Naturally, they are not ready, they have no patience. Instead, they all want to grab everything for themselves, as if they are going to lose otherwise. In all moments of life, human beings clash with each other, thinking others will take over them. And actually, if we compare it with the Kantian kind of interpretation about cognitive dimension of philosophy, Kant also says it in the third critique, not in the first critique, while speaking about knowledge. But in the third critique, he looks at critically the project of the first critique. And then Kant clearly says that human drive for cognition is basically to fulfill in some interest. And he speaks there of the need of cultivating disinterested. But that is not cognitive in a cognitive way, but through a different way that is given as, suggested as an aesthetic kind of approach to world and things. So, I'm not going to detail about Kant's exposition of that. And instead, there are a number of other criticism in recent philosophy against the human drive for essence. Not only Levinas. The prominent one are, actually if we employ them also, which can be employed, they can be, these reflections can also be employed to assist Levinasian project. That will make Levinasian position more clear if we do that. And I won't go into detail of or those reflections, but I will just mention that Foucault what says, and Foucault says that we don't need depth, we don't need essence, we need only the crease. That is the beauty of life, he says. And Nietzsche also says that that world puts a golden veil of appearance, and our attraction to life actually consists in that seductiveness, in that veiled appearance. And further, Nietzsche criticizes the truth-seeking, the essence-seeking tendency of human being. And in his opinion, that comes from the type of will that dominate and control things and other human beings. And another is Heideggerian exposition of this truth-seeking drive, the drive to gain being. Heidegger's hermeneutical explanation of truth in being and time explains that it is Dasein's interest that causes interpreting the world in various ways, for realizing one or other existential projects of a Dasein's life. This is the story of interest we come across in recent philosophy as well, along with Immanuel Levinas. So each Dasein have their own interest, and in this interestedness, the other humans are treated as mere means, or as in Heideggerian terms, as their selves. And in such seeking interest, each Dasein land up in war with each other. So I am not going into further details of that. The next point we have to look at in this section from being and otherwise than being is, he speaks about conatus. It is in the very same paragraph, I think. Yeah.
The first paragraph.
Yeah. Conatus.
Page 6.
Page 4. The first paragraph itself. Conatus, as we know, the term appears in Spinoza's philosophy. It is, as said, as Spinoza's saying goes, it is a struggle to persist in existence. It is seen in all organisms. Actually, that from the perspective of Spinoza or from the perspective of conatus, that makes the world go around. All living entities survive in life with the help of their conatus. If there is no struggle to existence, this can be a slight criticism also of Immanuel Levinas. If there is no struggle to existence, there is no conatus, an organism will be certainly destroyed by the others, by those who want to, destroyed by those who want to overpower it. This is the natural drama of existence, which we cannot surpass. So this is called actually nature. This is the play of nature, and the natural world is like that. And Nietzsche says this is the, in another term, as the will to power, the force that leads nature. But
I've always distinguished Spinoza's conatus. Is it discussion? Meant to be a discussion. That the Spinoza, the conatus is a will to equilibrium, and the Nietzschean conatus, the will to power, is an aggrandizement. Of course, both are the energy of nature, but one is always trying to increase, and one is always trying to reach a stability. That may not affect what you're saying. Yeah. No. Okay.
And however, in Deleuzian interpretations, both Nietzschean will to power and Spinozian conatus are equated, almost as similar.
For Deleuze, yes.
Yeah. So I'm not doing that, but I'm just.
Okay. Yeah.
For Nietzsche too.
And further, Nietzsche criticizes the altruistic tendencies of religion and other philosophies for their negation of the nature, the natural, this struggle for existence. And he was not actually, but he, by this Nietzsche was not actually advocating to have conatus for us, but only saying that we cannot avoid it. This criticism of religion is for their placing of human species in the divine order, neglecting this natural tendency in man. But I am not going to criticize Levinas based on this. But Levinas' relevance actually lies in a different sense. Levinas suggests an entirely different mode of existence and relationship based on altruism. This is certainly an unexplained layer of human existence in any previous philosophies, Nietzsche or Spinoza or any one of them. That is where lies the relevance and importance of Levinas. There is certainly such a dimension to our existence, that is exposure to the other in the other's proximity, in her proximity, being a hostage of the other, becoming a hostage of the other. Levinas may not be suggesting it as a possibility before every human contact in our lives. There is a lack of clarity with regard to that. Levinas, in any of Levinas's works, he does not advocate it as a general principle that we should practice with altruism to every other human being. But the importance is that there is such a rare occasion in everyday's life, in our relationship with some specific people. Levinas himself speaks about the singularity of such a relationship. But many ethical thinkers generalize his thinking as a suggestion for practicing it in our every encounter with every other. But that is, I don't think, is the position of Levinas. And this is where we can comparatively look at conatus and in its opposition, altruistic sacrifice for the other. And both dimensions have to be addressed while we analyze the nature of human life. And both has relevance. There may be conatus, but there is at the same time another dimension in our life by which we can able to surpass the conatus and open up ourselves to the otherness of the other. That shall also be possible, which the previous philosophers in fact miss. And then second paragraph of the same interest, Levinas says how this allergic egoism, he employs that allergic egoism between human beings. And this allergic egoism and clash of beings are managed in modern societies. Here also the political question comes in, which we have been discussing yesterday. In our present political order, this is a very struggle between each other and nation is a very, very prominent problem which we address every day. In our present political order, war is averted with the imposition of rational peace. That is what is called diplomacy between nations and all. He criticizes this rational peace. Levinas hints here that such a peace is not real peace. No, because it is not the spontaneous outcome of my regard for the other, but something maintained by calculation. Such a peace would be certainly fragile, like a bubble. Any moment it can burst, because it is not something comes out or from the deeper layers of our existence. As long as interest persists, it will dominate all our endeavors to maintain harmony with the aid of such diplomatic techniques. And then next page, the struggle for each against all becomes exchange and commerce. Here also he invites our attention to the political scenario of contemporary life. Here Levinas provides us with a key to understand the origin of modern civilization based on capital and profit. Although he does not go into details of it, but with the help of Levinasian thought, we may able to unravel or explain the origin of modernity and its political economy, like Marx did. But different from Marx, Levinas's thought gives us a different perspective and different understanding to commerce. And though Levinas never tried to build such an economic thought, but he leaves room, in my opinion, he leaves room for a possibility to develop an economic critique of the contemporary order, based on the idea of satisfaction of one's elemental passions. How this gives rise to the development of modern consumerism and modern political economy. Actually, that happens because of human alienation from the others, and in the abandoning of all possibility to enter into a radical intersubjectivity based on the experience of otherness. And then I shall pass to the next
to the next section.
Next section.
Can we stop then? Okay. Because I just want to underline, I mean, you said it, but I want to underline. We do hear that the solution for political conflict is commerce, business. This has always been a proposal. And you see here Levinas is certainly saying that the business is better than war, but this is not where the solution is found. Right? It's a very important statement, I think, in our world today. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to underline that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are correct. And he explains the structure of the present situation, how the conatus and interestedness lead to the strife as well as gives rise to the calculative world of commerce, and that also, that means he is rather critical of, instead of giving full approval, his critical sound is also visible.
So I know that in Israel, there were these people who said, well, once the country improves, once everyone's successful, once everyone's doing business with everyone, there will be peace and harmony. But it's not true. It's not true. People have deeper convictions. They have a higher belief. And these things have to be met. You know, like same with Tibet. Oh, prosperity, we'll build a railroad. But there are higher aspirations. There are deeper convictions. And Levinas is attempting to address these things.
Shall I pass to the
Please. Unless other people have comments.
Okay.
Okay. Can I ask in this section? We got. I'm not sure I understand the brieflessness of the spirit, which he talks about in the last paragraph of this section. I mean, can you comment? Because for me, it doesn't really mean anything. So yeah.
Remember, it's the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
So, in the book, he will now take up as a new image that doesn't appear except in passing in totality and infinity, the notion of saying as inspiration, respiration, breathlessness.
Yeah.
So I think that's all he's preparing us for the saying. Yeah. And it has greater prominence in otherwise than being than it has in totality and infinity. Of course, it's a reference to the spirit as ruach, which is originally in Hebrew breath. Right? So,
Is it?
Oh, yeah, spirit. So the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit is the most literal meaning that is breathing, breath. It's very interesting because in Buddhism it's so important, breathing in, breathing out.
Yeah.
Latin is exactly the same.
The same,
Spirit,
yeah.
spirit.
Breath.
That's
Right.
the
How about the Surah?
Hmm?
In Greek? I think it's also
In Greek also.
I don't know, but in Latin, spirit is breath. Psyche. No, so anemos in Greek means wind, And from animos, we have anima
Okay.
in Latin.
So,
There is a connection.
Good.
Thank you.
Good question.
Okay, yeah, please. While we move to the next section with this, the said and the saying, here also I am trying to explicate the central theme from my reading and my perspective. And if it is not apt kind of interpretation, please Richard intervene and suggest me. And said, he says always or for the saying, particularly in contemporary civilization. Saying is under the domination of the said. And then by saying, Levinas does not mean just an antecedent or a mere forward preceding language. It is not a mere pronouncement of some words or speech to others. That is the way we normally understand saying. If saying is to be understood in this sense, we have it in our everyday life. But in such saying, we do not genuinely make any exposure of ourselves before the other. So, by saying Levinas has some other meaning, like ideas in his mind. For him, in a radical ethical sense, we really say something only when we approach the other with a genuine commitment to be responsible to her, to the other. Such a saying would not be conveyance of some existing meanings or transmission of some truth. That is what Levinas calls that, conveying of meaning in propositions or in the form of words. But saying is different. In genuine saying, to him, we may not even utter a single word, but it only means exposure, making available, ourselves available for the other's need, to reach to her proximity, the other's proximity itself. Actually, this, even in the absence of any utterance or words, this very gesture itself signifies 1,000-fold meaning than any artificial saying we emit every day, in everyday life. And then he speaks about play, and he criticizes play and the saying as something entirely different. Is play free of interest? And that is what Levinas asks. Normally, we find in continental philosophy that we employ the idea of play as an occasion that differ from occasions of interest. Play is usually considered as without any interest. That is the general sense of play. For instance, Nietzsche uses the phrase play the useless, the word uses. This is higher than truth, without any interest. Play is overcomes all interest or free of all interest. And for him, actually truth is loaded with interest. Play is without any interest. And then Gadamer speaks about play. He uses play as immersing of oneself, forgetting oneself from all interest, losing the ego itself, the self. That is what the way he analyzes play. For him, this is the aesthetic stage, and he compares it with Kant's idea of disinterestedness and all. But in the Levinasian opinion, in play also, some interests are involved, like money, honor, and the like are involved. This is witnessed for probably in sports and games, which is supposed to promote friendliness and cooperation among human and between nations. And however, our exposure to other in saying, and this he contrasts with play and interest, in our exposure to the other in saying is fully free of all kinds of interest. It does not expect anything in return, neither money nor honor to us from the other, nor we want to be pleased and happy by this exposure, nor any eternal life as in the case of religion, guaranteed by religions, as a reward for serving the others. So it is free of all expectation. And the next idea comes in this section is, saying is pre-original form of language. Let us look what does it mean. Language normally originates from a self, that is said. Language and self actually coexist and comes into being together. The words of language are born out of grasping the essence of phenomena. While grasping, one achieves a hold on phenomena. It is to domesticate the phenomena, to reduce the alterity and multi-dimensions of phenomena. And actually the phenomena is formed out of reducing the alterity of the world and objects. By this act of human beings, the alterity is transformed and they are made into beings. This activity is performed in order to have a self-security for the subject. Here, otherness is removed and then one person realizes his own identity as a self-containing being. Actually, this activity of understanding and grasping beings coincides with the formation of selfhood for human being. Both comes together. Kant also explains this very process very well in his Critique of Pure Reason, while he speaks about transcendental unity of a perception as a kind of self-experience that rests on the or reaches through the working of categories by containing the multiplicity of the world. He says that this is as things in themselves, and reducing it into conceptual propositional form of language. This activity guarantees a selfhood for human being. So the parallel is very noteworthy here. And saying is also a kind of signification. However, it is prior to the formation of the world into discrete essences or words, or in the Saussurean sense, sign. Actually, this is the first form of signification. Saying is the first form of signification, signifyingness. And essence and beings are actually generated out of this saying. Saying is prior, and being comes or dependent on saying. And the language as such is actually grounded on saying. That is what Emmanuel Levinas wanted to convey us. The alterity of the other is, however, not an easy thing to comprehend and made into a thing. It may be possible while we experience the external things, but in the case of human other, it cannot be comprehended. and made into a theme of our consciousness. Our categories of understanding fail here, and the other does not yield to any of our familiar means of grasp. So we cannot articulate the meaning of the other in our cognitive discourses, like science, psychology, or anthropology. Instead, we have to allow ourselves, the option left to us is just allow ourselves to be affected by the otherness of the other, which produces a signifyingness different from grasping the other's meaning as a thing. Affected by the alterity of the other, we deliver ourselves over to the proximity to her. Approaching the other is signifying a kind of signifying. It is offering of our readiness to discharge our responsibility to the other. And then the next page, page 6. Yeah, in fact I was explaining that only. The first paragraph of the page 6. Here comes the theme of original nature of saying. And then two more themes come in this paragraph is substitution and the idea of hostage. Substitution. The idea of substitution comes for the first time here in Otherwise Than Being. This idea cannot be seen in any of the earlier texts of Levinas. Earlier, responsibility contained basically in answering to every call made by the other, like rendering food, shelter, and comfort to the other. Now, substitution indicates doing more than that. It is, he explains, putting oneself in the place of the other, to act as the answerable person to her every needs as well as misdeeds and faults. It is even to suffer every pain she causes me, to suffer and bear persecution, ill treatment inflicted by the other. So it is more radical than the previous, when the subjectivity described in the previous text. And I have to mention that this Levinasian idea of substitution has been criticized by his detractors as a kind of masochist desire. But such criticism is there, and only just saying. Substitution can go up to the level of sacrifice, even sacrificing one's life for saving the other. The higher act one can perform in life is thus considered as giving our life as a gift to the other. But it is reserved only for the one whom he loves. Then let us see the idea, what is the idea of hostage? Subject as a hostage. In the same place it comes. In the same paragraph appears the idea of one becoming a hostage of the other. This can be seen as an extreme situation in intersubjective relation where one himself feels as the hostage of the beloved. To be a hostage of the other is not a situation imposed by the other actually. On the other hand, it is it happens on the other hand, affected by the alterity of the beloved, the subject himself finds it impossible to move away from the proximity of the beloved. This is the condition of the subject as hostage. Now, differently from earlier texts of Levinas, the idea of subjectivity is figured for the first time. The ontologically constructed self is now ruptured by the experience of otherness, and thereby one becomes a subject of responsibility. If we look at the post-structuralist tradition generally, to which Levinas also belongs, post-structuralist philosophy generally speaks about the need of decentering of the subject, coming out of, insisting of the need of coming out of the subjectivity. Whereas here, it is noticeable in Levinas that Levinas professes the need of gaining subjectivity to the human beings instead of subverting subjectivity. In the opinion of Levinas, such a subjectivity alone will guarantee a meaningful human existence. And the same page 6, second paragraph. Let us see little more about the nature of the said. It explains that said actually originates from saying. That is a central theme explicated in that paragraph. To express saying, we have to give linguistic sense. We have to have linguistic sense. Then only the saying can be expressed. Then only it can be transmitted or conveyed to the other. The classical case or best example of such conveying of saying in the form of such or through words is poetry. Language of poetry is the best example. These are my perspectives. If you can criticize, I don't know. But I believe that we can defend this position from Levinasian ideas themselves, which could be seen in other parts of Levinasian works. So poetry, I feel, is the primordial saying and making of the self or subject available to the other. This is expressed through words in poetry. For instance, plenty of examples can be suggested. One immediate one comes to my mind is Pablo Neruda's two poems. One is Every Day You Play with the Light of the Universe, Appeal Visitor, You Arrive in the Flowers and Birds. And in the end, finally, I will bring you happy flowers from the mountains, bluebells, 6 baskets of kisses. I want to do with you what spring does with cherry trees. This is offering oneself, rendering oneself to the other. And there are plenty of this. And words are actually ontological devices to communicate a state of our being or mind. But Levinas says that although the saying is subordinated, generally it is subordinated. Now here also, in such expression also, such expressions cannot be possible without transforming it into the language of the Sat. But Levinas says that though the saying is subordinated here to the Sat, it is not fully destroyed, but preserved in the Sat. It is true that one's supreme exposure is exhausted or betrayal. He uses the term betrayal. That there is a betrayal of the genuine meaning of the saying here. Although it is betrayed, Levinas says that it is inevitable, such betrayal, because we cannot help. We have to abbreviate or transform the exposedness or proximity to verbal language. Then only it can be uttered or it can be conveyed to the other. So we cannot help. But still, saying is not fully lost. In the language of the Sat also, saying is preserved.
So I would say that it is preserved because it's lost, and it's lost because it's preserved.
In poetic language it is preserved.
but being preserved, it's lost. Because being preserved means it is petrified, it is there, it is objectified, but the saying is something fluid. It's something that cannot be trapped in words. So it is. I think this is the point where Heidegger and Levinas have almost the same perspective of language. Of these two dimensions of language, one original dimension, and the second dimension which is derivative with respect to this original dimension. And I think this is the point where they both differ from Derrida's perspective on language. And
Earlier than Derrida.
that's right, earlier than Derrida. Derrida develops another understanding of language. According to it, there's no such original dimensions of language.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
But that's only one. That's only the language we speak. That has no origin whatsoever, and which doesn't convey anything but itself.
Right, it's just language.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, maybe we should stop. I'm sure you have more to say.
I have more, but I shall.
You're very close. You're very
No,
close.
with one last point.
Please go on.
Only 1 minute.
Please.
Okay. I have more, but I won't go into that. But only this point. Therefore, we find. This is my conclusion. If it is wrong, you correct me. Therefore, we find two types of the language of the set in the Levinas. One is the set that manifests the saying. Example, poetic language. This is a saying of the. In such a kind of set, saying is manifested. And another type of set is the set manifested in metaphysics and scientific discourses. It is not an address of proximity, but in them, and in such discourses are the result of the drive to understand the world. Ontological drive comes from the ontological drive. In it, the otherness of the world and other human beings are reduced to the same. Whereas in poetic kind of language, it is not like that. Saying is preserved. And this dual function of signifyingness is what probably Levinas says as amphibole. I don't know whether I'm correct. And this is in the sense I get from this passage, paragraph. Okay, I'm finishing.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure we could discuss it, but hopefully, if we go directly into ideas, we can just continue a discussion that will surround what you're saying.
We now continue.
Yes,
Just
we just-
immediately.
Immediately. Is that okay?
I just
Okay.
wanted to open my.
No, open your computer.
Yes,
Do
I
it.
need
Do
my
it. So
comments.
while you're opening your computer, I will say something about the last thing you said. I think there is a danger in thinking that in the said that there's a said that is somehow more prone to saying and a said that's less prone to saying. No doubt there's something about that that's true. 2 + 2 = 4 does not lend itself to much saying. But outside of the discourse of quantification in mathematics, and I realize you did use an example of in the sciences, I think it's a great risk to think that, we can think of discourses whose intention is to keep the saying alive, but surely such a book would be the Bible, if any book at all. And yet we know the Bible can be treated exactly like a said, with no saying whatsoever. So I would just qualify the susceptibility of a text to be brought alive into its fluidity, as it were, in terms of a text, in terms of the reader and how it's read. And the same even goes, we've all seen this with even spoken words. People speak spoken words as if they're robots, without a saying also. But you're quite right, and here Levinas says it right at the beginning of the book. It's not that just the translation is betrayal, everything is betrayal. And then you ask yourself, well, why not just stop talking if everything is betrayal? That's an even greater betrayal, because by speaking, by engaging in this force, we are able to bring to some kind of vibration, as it were, bring this excess over being, the surplus over being. I think I used that phrase from Beckett, I can't go on, but I must go on. I can't say what I want to say, but I must continue to try. And that's the Levinasian imperative. I can never be fully human, I must try to be fully human. I can never respond to the other, but I must try to respond to the other. I think this is what we're, in terms of bringing the said to saying. Is your computer open?
Yeah, I don't need it.
Okay, so why don't we roll right into the next one?